What is the most fair way to tax people in a country that wants to have taxes? As someone who's in the international tax space, I've often given this thought, and today I'm going to share with you my ideas on how to fairly tax people in Western countries. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson. This is Nomad Capitalist, where we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you're treated best. There's a couple things I've noticed being in this international tax space. One is that the people who are most successful tend to be pragmatic. I'm an entrepreneur. You have to be pragmatic to be successful in business, in my opinion. And so while I have sympathy for a number of libertarian arguments, when I hear taxation is theft, I hear someone who doesn't necessarily want to improve their position. I'm not worried about taxation being theft because I'm living a very, very tax-advantaged lifestyle, and I've created a way that I can do that among having a lifestyle that I just happen to enjoy personally on an emotional and in a human level. But what I've also noticed is that while some people do want to pay zero tax, whether it's political or they just want to put more of their own money to work in their own business or in their portfolio, there are plenty of people who realize, listen, if my 5 or 10% is well used by the government, then I have no problem paying that. And I think that in the scope of international planning, being open to paying a little bit of tax is a good thing. Now, when the issue of tax fairness comes in, I push back on people in the media and people in many Western countries, where I say, if I go to a country and I pay 5% tax, I'm still paying a lot. In fact, I may be paying 100 or even 1,000 times more than the average person is paying. And so when I look at the most fair tax systems in the world, certainly you can look and say, hey, zero tax is fair. People always retort that, not every country has oil. These people are often from the United States, which is flush with oil. But if your country is going to have a tax system, I look at countries that have things like non-dom tax systems or lump sum tax systems, where let's say you want to move to Switzerland. And they say, all right, let's figure out what it costs you to live. And let's apply a multiple to that. And here's your tax bill. And by the way, if you're from Europe, we're going to give you one set of criteria. And if you're not from Europe, we're going to give you a more expensive set of criteria. And here's your bill. And you know what? If someone moves to Switzerland and they pay 400,000 francs in tax every year, they're paying a lot more than most people are paying. And I don't think they should feel guilty at all. So I think those kind of tax systems are pretty fair. Non-dom systems where you pay, or some kind of remittance-based tax system, those are all very fair. But I wanted to share a comment with you from someone who took the words right out of my mouth, because when I'm talking to folks from the United States, we sometimes discuss, what would a country like the United States, what should they do to make taxes more fair? Hey, after all, people say, Andrew, I agree with you that taxes are too high in Western countries, including the United States, but what should they do? They've got to fund the government somehow. Well, here's a comment from Chris Nolan. And Chris is a man after my own heart. He says, yes, I don't remember what he's saying yes to, but yes, the annual federal spending in 2020, $6.6 trillion. Divided by 330 million citizens, that's $20,000 a person. Here's your tax bill, he says. That's fair and equitable for all. Man, woman, and child. Can't afford it? You can work off your debt in the military or another federal sector job. Or we can extremely limit annual federal spending to something reasonable, like $1 trillion or so every person only has to pay $3,000 per year. And so I want to talk about Chris's comment, because I think it brings up an interesting debate. And if you wanted to ask me what is the most fair system for taxing people who live in a country, I have some things I disagree with Chris on. I think you should put taxes to be like a bus ticket. Now, again, we're being pragmatic here. A country like the United States is never going to have zero tax. So for those of you who want to live in the United States and we just want to debate, how many angels can dance on the head of a pin, here's what you would do. In my opinion, the first thing you would do is you would apply a system that allows foreigners to come and live in your country. And like in Switzerland, as in other countries with that kind of system, you'd say, hey, listen, you want to get an EB-5 green card? You want to make an investment in our country and move here? All right, you come on in and you give us $1 million every year and we'll leave you alone. Now, obviously, 60-some% of Americans in 2020 paid zero federal income tax. And so someone coming in and paying $1 million, that would be a great boon. Now, it doesn't exactly make a huge dent in $6.6 trillion, but I imagine you would find plenty of people who would be happy to move to a country such as the United States and pay a flat $1 million a year and just to be left alone. Now, listen, maybe they'd pay more. You'd have to figure out where the supply and demand chart is and how many people you want to come and what they would pay. But believe me, you will find plenty of people from emerging countries who would love to invest in the United States. And again, this could be other countries as well, but we're talking U.S. numbers. And they'd be happy to pay 1,000 times what the average person, or 500 times what the average person's paying. I would take that. And I would start applying that to, to the budget. Now, obviously, $6.6 trillion is ridiculous, and there's a lot of waste, and there's a lot of money that is just it's abuse and what have you, and there's a lot of money that's it's just misspent. And so after you collect everybody's $1 million of the foreigners who want to come in, it could be 500,000, it could be 2 million, who knows? Think of a number. After you apply that, you figure, all right, what's left? Here's what the citizens, here's what the locals have to pay. And then you make like a bus ticket system. So I don't entirely agree with Chris where he says, hey, here's your $20,000 tax bill. Okay, listen, maybe you want to incentivize children. Seems like a lot of carve-outs in the tax system for children, but maybe you want to incentivize people having children. Certainly, someone who has a legitimate physical or mental or developmental disability, they should not be sent a bill, or they should be sent a reduced bill, much like a bus ticket. All right, if you're elderly and you're on a fixed income, perhaps that should be reduced. I don't believe we should be sending people to, be in the military in some kind of, indentured servitude or work in a federal sector job. I think what you want to do is you want to bring in a bunch of money from foreigners who want to live there, open that up to wealthy foreigners, which, a lot of countries around the world are trying to bring in wealthy people. And then they're pilloried by the media for having golden visa programs or citizenship by investment programs. You know what? Everyone who contributes to St. Lucia's Citizenship by Investment, national fund, they're putting a lot of money into the country on a per capita basis. That money is actually being used properly. They're putting more money in than, you could argue other people are. And so bring in the foreigners, let them reduce the number, and then say, all right, Americans, or okay, locals, all right, what are we going to pay for it? We have this much money in the pot. What's our budget going to be? And let's see how many people want to continue paying for the world's largest military by a factor of God knows what. Let's see how many people want to start, stop this program or this pet program or this thing. It all sounds great. And these 60-some% of people who aren't paying a dime in federal tax want to complain how, you're shutting down PBS, you're shutting down Big Bird. Listen, if people want to get together and say, hey, we want to pay for Big Bird, that's great. Here's your share. Your share, it's an extra, 15 cents a year for you to pay for Big Bird to stay in the air. By the way, they have things like that in the UK and countries like that. People pay this television tax, which a lot of people think is ridiculous. But, if the people get together and say, hey, we want Big Bird, hey, that's great. We'll just raise the budget. And so, you would get people together and you would say, listen, do we really need to spend $6.6 trillion? Because we only have, half $500 billion from whatever it is from people who moved here. And then, hey, here's your bill. And we apply the bus ticket system where, all right, maybe you get a 50% reduction or 100% reduction. But, here's your bill. And so Chris makes an interesting point. That, to me, would be the most fair and equitable system because, why do people say we pay taxes? People say, well, you should pay taxes to drive on the roads. You should pay taxes to send your kids to school. Now, for those things, I say, why don't we increase user fees? And again, if you want to have some kind of tiered system, people think big business is getting away with murder. That's great. All right, fine. Have the trucks that drive on the roads increase prices. And then people can ask, why are tomatoes more expensive? But have more user fees. And listen, I would agree. When one huge business sues another huge business, what are the court filing fees? Is that really paying for all the work the court is doing? No, the taxes are paying for it. So bump up the filing fees for large, legal actions. It shouldn't cost $300 to file a lawsuit, and maybe that's not the exact number, but I can tell you, when you have a years-long trial, I'm guessing whatever you're paying in user fees is not covering it. So why don't you increase that too? Why don't you make people actually pay for the services they're using? Listen. Do I think companies should pay a bunch of tax? No, of course, I'm all in favor of going where you're treated best. I also don't think if your company pays zero tax, you should be calling the police and having them act as your, unpaid security force. And so let's have user fees for that. You're a business, all right. We're not going to have a corporate tax rate, but we're going to, you're going to pay for services if you want your store protected. And by the way, I had family who lived in a kind of a semi-rural area where they had to pay the fire department every year. And if their house burned down, Or if their house caught on fire, the fire department would come, they'd put out the fire, and they'd send you a bill. So you could either pay them $500 a year or whatever it was, or when your house caught on fire, you could pay them 40 grand. You make the choice. And that worked pretty well in that area. So I'm not an economist. I am not someone who, I don't have all the facts and figures, but I'm just saying if people want to say what is fair, to me what is fair is everyone gets together and has some skin in the game. It is not fair to have 2/3 of the country almost paying nothing and dictating what everyone else pays, much like the two wolves and the sheep getting together and deciding what's for dinner. And so I bet if more people had a share, if more people had to say, oh, holy cow, there's 3 of us, our bill is 10 grand, maybe that, maybe Big Bird's got to go. Or I don't know what the example is, but, what is that we want to get rid of because we don't want to pay 10 grand, we want to pay 7 grand. Now, if you did this, you would get rid of all the corporate taxation. You would probably see businesses, investing a lot more in their companies, and you'd see hiring employees. The same way I did, by the way, when we dramatically lowered our tax bill. I mean, Nomad Capitalist obviously is very tax efficient, and we put a lot of money back into hiring and expanding, and we can do so very comfortably because we don't have a big tax bill to worry about, among other things. And so what is the most fair tax system in summary? Number one, a bus ticket system where everyone's paying their fair share based on the things that everyone decides they want. You're letting foreigners come in and letting them pay a lot more than locals for the privilege of living there because, listen, in all fairness, sure, there are people who want to come and live in the United States, and you know what? You'll find people who don't want to live in the United States because they have to do all the crazy tax compliance for their $50 million real estate empire in China, who, if it's just like, hey, pay us $1 million and we leave you alone, yeah, they'd be interested. And then number 3, you've got to find ways to reduce the cost by getting everybody invested. For me, that would be fair. Now, if you don't want to pay that, if you don't want to deal with your compatriots having to vote that in, certainly you can go where you're treated best now, and you can go to places where they already don't have tax. You can go to places where they tax you nothing, like the UAE, the Cayman Islands, where they tax you only on your local income, which for many people is nothing. In countries like Malaysia or Thailand or Panama or Georgia, you can go to countries where, again, they only tax you on what you bring in, which could be pretty, dramatically low tax rate. Plenty of those in Europe. So what is fair, I think, is an irrelevant question, quite frankly, because there's probably a country out there that already does what you think is fair, and you can go there. But if you want to stay at home, it's an interesting philosophical discussion. Don't stop now. We've got well over 1,000 more videos here on YouTube for you to watch and learn how to go where you're treated best. And if you want to work with Nomad Capitalist personally, go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply, learn about our unique, tried and true process, garnered over years of experience, and learn how you can become our client.